Dominic Gibbs. I'm the CEO of Cage Steel.
Dom, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, sir. You?
Firing. Yes, you've got to be in this current climate. You know, it's you got to know where your ship's heading. I think, or there seems to be an awful lot of people that want to steer it for you. Can we say?
Yeah, dead right.
Should we start, Dom, by just saying a big thank you to Naz Hussein QC, who's put us in touch, and I think we're going to give a shout out towards the end for Naz's son Sal, who's a friend of mine, for his upcoming charity challenge.
Yeah.
So thank you, Naz. Dom, you're a fascinating guy, and that's the reason I started my podcast. Is I get to sit here and hopefully one day get paid for chatting to interesting gentlemen like you. Can we start by talking about your current project? Is it Cage Steel?
It is, yeah. So it's the second biggest mixed martial arts promotion in the UK. With it, there are other things that we have kind of started to do, but you know, the main crux of it is the shows, the promotion.
Why has mixed martial arts got so huge the world over?
Because it's exciting. It's not like boxing. You've got two things. You can only use these two. That's it. You know, you get so Muay Thai. You can use the knees and the elbows, and that makes that more interesting. But then with MMA, you take each other to the ground, and then it's another world, you know. And it's not just another world like when you talk about jiu-jitsu, where the techniques is just, it's like 10 years to get a black belt because it's such a big project. But then you throw in that you can get punched in the head while you're down there. That's a different world.
I was going to say, it sounds like they've got an awful. Your opponent's got a lot more weapons in his arsenal to hurt you with.
Yes, that's right.
Should give a quick hello, John Hegan, if you're watching. Hello, John. John was on the podcast. Another former Marine who got his Gracie black belt in jiu-jitsu. Nice. As you said, takes 10 years.
Yeah, so we'll do that. Well done, John.
Yes, definitely. And how many fights have you organised? I'm guessing the current climate has really sort of stomped on that for the time being.
Yeah, so I've done 26 shows so far. I had one booked for July the 4th, but as soon as March happened, which we literally got away with it, we just got the show, and then it was all locked down. And we should have had a show. So we moved the show from July the 4th to August the 22nd, which was last Saturday. Didn't happen. We've got one booked for 5th of December, and we've just got to. I describe myself as annoyingly positive, and I kind of was for the August show, but it didn't pan out. So I'll just keep positive for the 5th of December. You know, everyone and their grandma wants to fight now because they've all been cooped up. They've not been training, you know, properly as they'd like to do. They've certainly not been fighting. So I've got a list 3 miles long of people that want to get on the show. So we need to get this on. Yes.
I can imagine there's some sports probably work quite well with social distancing, like maybe marathon running or even football, but MMA it's not going to happen, is it?
It's a bit up close and personal.
It would turn into shadow fighting or something.
Yeah, I'll have to get some boxing gloves on broomsticks or something. You know, it's, I don't know. I shouldn't say that in jest, because the way the governments around the world are creating, they'll probably come up with it, and then they'll come up with some crazy. You got to have a mask on while you're doing it.
Some of the pictures or memes that are it beggars belief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you ever feel, you know, down on yourself, folks, just look at what how some people are behaving, and they think that's normal. So is it the one of the orchestras, like a philharmonic orchestra? I can't remember which country. They've got the they've got the thing. I'm not going to say the word, but they've got the thing on their face, and they've got a little zip in it to play the instrument, and it's gosh. Yes. Have you fought yourself, Dom? I think I've seen you with a pair of gloves on, haven't I?
Yeah, I've done bits, Chris. My last fight was about 3 years ago now, so kind of I should actually stop it and grow up, but I kind of keep saying one more. I'm 49 now, so maybe one after next July when I'm 50, so that I fight when I'm 50, just to show people that you can. You know, that's the. It's always, I always look at things as they're bigger than me. You know, like the Inky Johnson stuff. I don't know if you've seen Inky Johnson, but he talks about it. It's bigger than you. If you go and do something that people say, oh, you can't do that, so you go and do it, and then everyone else knows that you can. So.
Well, if Rocky's anything to go by, you can keep going until you're 90.
Yeah, Rocky 3004. They'll put a standard stair lift in the Philadelphia steps.
Yes. And so, serious question: who's the hardest out of you and Stapleton?
Oh, Stapes is a tough man. Stapes is a tough man. Like, he's a good MMA fighter. He's a tough guy. And put it this way, if he's got a 50 cal with him, then that's it, you know. those things tear you apart. So
You have got an unfair. If you've got Martin 50 cal Stapleton, that's in the middle of that is slightly an unfair advantage, isn't it? Really.
it is if you bring the weapon with you, like.
Yeah, so Stapes, hello if you're watching, brother. Another Marine brother of mine that's been on the podcast. Very wonderful man. Very positive guy, you know. Very
great guy.
straight,
Great guy.
gets down to work, makes stuff work for him. It's again another reason I started the podcast.
He's a great guy. I've got a bit of a nice story about Stapes. So we went to interview some fighters up there, and I literally went to set off, and the snow was horrendous. And I said to my marketing guy, I said, look, we're just going to try and get there. At the end of the day, if we get there and we get the interview, it doesn't matter. You know, we'll worry about it later. We went in the most horrendous snow, but we were stuck on M62 for hours. But we managed to make it to the gym, did loads of video work, but then got stuck. So we kind of went, do you know what, we'll wait till the kind of motorways open later on. It just got worse and worse. We jumped on the M62. We were sat there for 4 hours in the car before they turned us round, sent us back. So the first thing we did is rang Stapes. Like, Stapes, do you know anywhere that, you know, hotels or anything like that? Because they said, if you get stuck, you know, give us a call. So we rang them. We went to where they was eating. They'd finished training, and they was in a like kebab shop or something. But they were eating clean. So we went in there, and between Stapes, I think is his brother, lots of people from the gym. Everyone was kind of making phone calls, you know, and they were phoning different hotels that they knew for us. But everyone had done the same thing, so there were no rooms. So we're like, oh, we're sleeping in the car here. So Stapes' brother actually said, look, you can't do that. Come back to mine. I've got 2 settees. Chucked us 2 sleeping bags, and we kicked on his settee until the next morning, and then rather slowly made it back to Doncaster. But it was like finding different routes and that, but absolutely class. The guys there, really looked after us. You know, they didn't have to go to that, and it's the kind of story we laugh about now. But those guys, you know, thank you so much for what they did for us that night.
It reminds me of the time we set off on a stag do to go to Krakow, right? Got to, I think it was Bristol Airport, and in fact the snow leaving the southwest as we went down Holden Hill into Exeter, I just gently nudged the brakes on the car and it just kept going at the same speed. That's how heavily the snow had already settled. I think by the time we got there and woke up the next morning, the car was just covered in snow. I let all the air out the tires. We crawled to the airport, and we're all sat there like, you know, like lads do, having a beer in the departure lounge. And our flight was the last one on the board that hadn't been cancelled. And we're like, please, please. And it went, ching, cancel. So instead of going to Krakow, we went to Leamington Spa.
Nearly the same.
We all stayed in a travel lodge.
There you go.
You've got an interesting upbringing, Dom. Naz was telling me. Like I think I said to you earlier, I don't like the expression "army brat." It must scar service children for life. That expression, but that's.
Chris, I embrace it. I'm an army brat. It's I loved it. You know what I mean? I loved my time. My dad was in the Royal Artillery, so we kind of moved a lot. And the term army brats is something that we found amusing, you know, and we still kind of refer ourselves to that, you know, the whole family, we say, oh, we were army brats. And like I said, I embrace it. I quite like the term, so it's all good.
Mm. Do you think it comes from, you know, it must be hard being a service child because you've got to keep moving schools every 2 years, yeah, or whatever. Sometimes you're living abroad and you've got to fit in a foreign country.
Yeah.
It might be, well, I mean, it's recognized now that really has a traumatic effect on, it can have a traumatic effect on children. Some of the veterans charities are now, you know, aiming their focus at that sort of sector of the veterans family, the service family.
See, I actually, again, I embrace it because what it did for me is it made me kind of have to, because I think all of us have a kind of shyness, but it kind of made me, you know, like Tears of a Clown, where the guy's crying inside, but he's acting up. And it's like, although I was kind of shy, I had to forget that. And I had to go into a room and I had to, you know, into a new school. I had to kind of make that difference quickly so that I kind of grew friends quickly. And it taught me to be able to do this stuff. So when I'm in public now, like public speaking, anything like that, I love it. I absolutely, like, I embrace it. And I think that's come from the learnings of moving schools and going into new schools and having to get new friends. And I like I said, I think it's great.
So which places did you live?
So we lived in Germany, Singapore, Cyprus, Ireland, plenty around the UK. So yeah, quite a few places. But do you know what people ask me about it? They're like, oh, and because I was only young as well, I don't remember everything about the places. I can remember a little bit of like Singapore and Germany. But in fact, to be honest with you, I always even forget the kind of towns or cities that we're in. I have to ring my mum every night. Where were we? And I never remember. So I never kind of remember the place. I remember like it's just an army base. You know, you kind of married quarters on an army base, and just used to remember like who was the scariest kind of officer around there with his eyes not showing and his peaked. I mean, all the brats used to run off. So, I remember like Germany being such a clean country. I remember Singapore being like, I kind of loved that whole thing with Singapore. And I think that's why I took to Thai boxing so much, because that's where I kind of first encountered it. And then going to Thailand kind of reminds me of a lot of like my youth stuff. So yeah, it's kind of mad.
Yeah, Singapore's an interesting place. Thailand's good value, isn't it?
Thailand's a lovely place. I absolutely adore it. It's something that, you know, the whole culture. It's kind of a Buddhist faith there, but I mean, it's all about looking after people and being nice to each other. And what better way to live? You know, I think in the Western culture we lose that a lot. We're too busy in our own lives. Everything's kind of 300 mile an hour, and we lose track of what's actually, you know, what life is actually about, and about being nice to people. And you only go on their roads to realize how much they're kind of chilled out, because they're all everywhere, and no one gets mad, no one gets out of a car and starts having a punch up. Here, someone drives 2 mile an hour slower in front of you, people are beeping their horn. It's like, and I'm chilled now by going to Thailand and seeing that culture and just thinking, do you know what? No one can make you mad. And if someone pulls out on you, then so what? You know, it's the definition of hatred is drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. While you're mad at them pulling out on you, they drive off and they have their day. They don't even know they've upset you, and you're still burning inside, and it ruins your day. It's like, just let it go. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of culture in Thailand that I absolutely love.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because to the other side of the coin, they've got, you know, the Asian face.
Yeah.
And you don't want to upset one of those guys.
Well, that's the thing. Like, be nice to everyone, but if someone does you properly wrong, then they're tough, you know.
Yeah. My nose, if anyone's ever wondered why it's not so straight, that was fighting a Thai doorman. So I'm guessing he was kind of, you know, low-level mafia in Pat Pong, was it? Is it in Bangkok, Pat Pong? And yeah, and that was about. That was actually about face. You know, if you upset, certainly in Hong Kong, Thailand, you upset somebody, they can really hold a grudge, and there's this like red mist anger that just comes up, and they can almost be sort of out of control. I saw a Western. I was at the full moon party on Koh Phangan, and the locals had set these boxes up in a square to serve as their bar, and they were all, you know, there's say 5 young Thai men. I'm guessing with the sort of right connections in that area to be selling beer at the biggest kind of party they have over there, and this drunken Westerner thought it'd be funny to hop over into the middle of the bar and start, you know, trying to help them serve. You see, they didn't see it that way. They didn't understand the guy's just a bit drunk and he's joking. They thought he was taking a piss out of them.
Right.
And the next thing, I went over to try and drag the guy out, and my brother who lived in Thailand just grabbed me and went, no. And it was, well, yeah, sometimes you got to make your choices, haven't you?
Yes.
maybe live another day, but yeah, gosh. Have you traveled? You know, have you been a traveller as an adult, or is it your?
No, do you know what? Since traveling as a kid, I kind of never travelled for a lot of years. I don't know whether it's because I'd kind of had my fill of moving around, and then I kind of rediscovered it again. And like, once I'd been to Thailand, that was it. I didn't really want to go anywhere else. I had the odd trip, you know, to like Spain and Mallorca and stuff like that. But like, if I can get away, I'm going to get away to somewhere that I absolutely love. So I've like rediscovered the traveling in terms of going out somewhere that's incredible. So, but yeah, I didn't do it for a long time. It's strange, isn't it? Because like, you travel so much as a kid and then you just go, oh, yeah, I'm not bothered now.
Yeah, for me, it was about living out my childhood dreams, especially after I had sort of 3 years in the wilderness of addiction. And when I came out, that I just really wanted to experience a life that I could one day sit back and just be like, I've done it now, you know, I've done all the things that I wanted to do. But with the traveling, it got to the point where it became routine, and that was wrong, you know. It would you start to take these wonderful exotic locations that to some people would be the holiday, or the, you know, I was backpacking, but you know, for them it would be the holiday of their lifetime to be, you know, here in maybe Laos or Cambodia, or the jungles of South America and all this sort of thing. And it just all started to become like life for me. And at that point I thought, 80 countries, all 7 continents, I'm going to take my foot off the gas now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Culminated in a trip to Antarctica. I went on an expedition to the Antarctic Polar Circle. And again, I thought it was just routine, Dom. You know, I thought I've seen 6 continents. Be a bit of a shame to die and not have seen all 7. And again, I you know, signed up for this expedition thinking it was going to be a bit mundane. How wrong was I? It was absolutely the best trip I've ever been on. I was part of the dive team on the ship, and so we were scuba diving on icebergs and with leopard seals and stuff. And we sadly lost a diver on our diver died on our first dive, which was just a huge shock for the whole expedition. But you know, notwithstanding that, the trip was just so phenomenal in itself. Yes, Antarctica, folks, get your snowshoes on.
I'll be right. The map's behind you then.
Yeah, I've got one there, and I've got one there, which is why I'm always looking up. I just, yeah, I love the planet, Dom. You know, I love this life. I love the universe. It's just so, I just love to see the beauty in it all, you know, because it's a real leveler for when the challenges come along, that you can just go, well, I'm just, you know, that either makes sense to people or it doesn't. But yeah,
I get it.
Can we talk about Hillsboro and your fateful ticket? Was it, or stumbling over my words here because I don't want to offend anybody, but
yeah. So Hillsboro, I was a Liverpool supporter from a very young child, and my brother was an Everton supporter, so I had a good childhood, you know. 70s and 80s, Liverpool and Everton were really good teams. That kind of taught me to fight. I had an older brother of 3 years, so kind of learnt a bit there. But I used to go 15 years old, you know, jump on a train. Mum never, you know, it wasn't a kind of thing then. Just jump on a train, go to Liverpool on my own, queue outside the ground from 11 o'clock, turnstiles opened at 1, and then you go inside and you've got 2 hours before 3 o'clock kick-off. And it like, if you ask me to wait 4 minutes for something now, nah. But I used to wait 4 hours outside the ground and not like it was fine. I don't understand it now. But so yeah, I'd been going quite a lot. I'd been to the semi-final the year before, 1988, which was again Liverpool, Nottingham Forest. And 1989 comes along. In the January, I'd been to watch Liverpool versus Sheffield Wednesday there. It was a 3-3 draw. I think we were behind. I think we pulled 2 goals back. I think Steve Nicholson had scored, something crazy like that. And I stood at the turnstile, the only one that kind of broke away. So that's where I would have gone. So I always got to the ground early. I would have stood at that turnstile. 1989 comes along. I get a ticket, but I become ill. So I sell my ticket, and Hillsboro obviously plays out as it did. I mean, my mum didn't even know that I hadn't gone, and she was working at Doncaster Racecourse at the time, and she said that she went into like the bar area and the TVs were on, and she's like, "What's happening?" They told her, and she has to use the phone. There was no mobile phones then, so she rang the house phone, and I kind of answered, and she like broke down, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're safe," you know. She thought I was there, and
Dom, could you just give a quick overview of what happened for our American brothers and sisters?
okay, so it's the worst football disaster that's happened in this country. It was the 15th of April, 1989. 96 supporters lost their lives at an FA Cup semi-final.
It was a crush, wasn't it?
Yeah, so the main people that kind of suffered were those that had got to the ground earlier, and then there's also, I don't want to go into like the kind of, there was a massive political thing, you know. It was a big cover-up. It's been proven now that it's a cover-up. That's not me just giving an opinion, you know. If people don't like to hear that, then what does Shapiro say? Facts don't care about feelings, you know. The facts are that the police messed up that day. And 30 years, you know, people had to fight for truth and justice. And that's the thing that's kind of made me who I am as well, is because I've kind of been part of the Hillsboro family support group. I've always been quite vocal on getting truth and justice. I've always attended the ground every year. I've gone to Hillsboro first, put some flowers down, and then gone to Anfield for the kind of service within Anfield. And it's taken those families. I don't know how they did it. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how they did it. How they fought for that truth and justice when they'd lost their loved ones, you know. And some of them were young people, and the way that they were treated was just disgraceful. That the police basically took control of the bodies, said they don't belong to you anymore. They belong to the coroner, and they did a massive cover up. They all got rid of their notes in their notebooks, and I really feel for the rank and file police officers that were on duty that day, because they were just following orders. They were doing as they'd done, and they were trying to save lives. And the hierarchy, you know, they knew they'd done wrong, and they tried to cover it up. And that's been a key thing of it. And it's only just now that the truth is out and the justice is out. And it's been a long, hard fight. And those families should hold their heads high, because they did it respectfully. I don't know that I was, you know, from my standing point, I was annoyed, I was angry. So as a young man seeing that, you know, I wasn't quite 18, being brought up to see that governments cover things up, it was harsh. It was a tough lesson, but it made me who I am, and I have to be grateful that I wasn't there, and I have to kind of use my life now for good, and respect the fact that I am here, and there's people that aren't. So, you know, that's kind of made me take decisions, even, you know, risky decisions. My kind of look at risk in terms of money and things like that. Like my financial advisor did a risk analysis on me, and they talk about the kind of bell effect, where most people are within this bell on risk. And I was he said it's like the like lowest score he's ever had in terms of risk. Like, and I just look at it and think, you know what? Money can come and go, but your life is so important, and it can be snatched so easily. And 96 people went to a football match and never returned home.
Yeah, and we should remember, Dom, shouldn't we, that in that 30-year period where the families didn't get, I don't want to say justice, because how can the loss of a loved one ever be, end in justice? But by the time they got the truth came out, how many of those families had drunk themselves to death or died of a broken heart? This, you know, the repercussions of it.
Yeah.
We had the Sun newspaper, didn't we, that was came out with probably the most vile headline.
Yeah.
I'm guessing in certainly in British history, insinuating what they were insinuating that the fans were urinating on the dead bodies and pickpocket, stealing their wallets. And
yeah, even to this day, I won't touch the Sun newspaper. I've always had the thing of don't buy the Sun. It's banned in Liverpool. You don't pick up a paper. The Sun newspaper doesn't get sold in shops in Liverpool. It was disgraceful what they did. Disgraceful. Those families were suffering as it was, to have that thrown at them. And then the thing is that a lie told enough or loud enough is believed. And like you said about today's current climate, that lie then was sent across the world, and for years and years I had to put up with people. And I'll tell you something, one day it was at Hillsboro, a Liverpool versus Sheffield Wednesday game, and as I went up the stairs, a steward actually said to me, "Well, you were murderers." My reaction was terrible, and it was only that I had kind of 10 other friends around me who kind of ground don't kick off, that's what they want you to do. But he just listened to that lie, and those families first of all had to get rid of that lie before they could tackle the bigger lie, which was the cover up.
Yes.
Terrible.
I feel quite fortunate, Don, because I studied youth and community work, right? That's what my degree is in. And as part of that, as part of sort of anti-oppressive practice or anti-discriminatory practice, as it's now referred to, you learn to see the structure in life and in society.
Yeah.
How all these mechanisms are in place to keep the people where they, to keep them oppressed, right?
Yeah.
And just learning from that disaster, you can see how the law, and I'm not talking about individual police officers now, obviously, who are for the most part, wonderful people who protect us all. I'm talking about the structure of the law, how it ain't for you, it's to keep these, it's to keep the pyramid,
Yeah.
the pyramid that's controlled by sociopaths, really.
Yeah.
And on top of that, what's another lesson to look at the media? You say you won't buy the Sun. I won't buy any newspaper, Don.
Yeah, I don't to be fair.
I won't watch a single mainstream media news item unless it's to see what they're lying to the people. What lie are they trying to get the people to believe now?
Yeah.
As a life coach, I say to my to my students, if you see it on the news, it's not true.
Yeah.
If it comes out of a politician's mouth, it's not true. It's not. I'm not cynical. It's just I'm free, and it's a great place to be. And I wish everybody, was free, because the society would be so much better, wouldn't it?
The best thing I did was, and it's a lot of years ago now, when someone said, "Stop watching the news because they just they bombard you with negative information." And it's something like 70,000 negative parts of news that come at us every day, which is crazy to think. So I stopped buying a newspaper. I stopped watching mainstream news, and it's mad how your life is so much nicer. You got BBC News at 10. So most people, the last thing they watch at night is BBC News at 10. They get all this negative connotations thrown at them, how the world's terrible and how their life is misery. And then they go to bed, and they're supposed to get up the next day and go to work and be, happy and jolly, but they're not, because they've had this negative thrown at them. So yeah, the best thing I ever did was stop watching mainstream media.
Yes, exactly. It's fascinating. I probably won't get into one here, but I've been studying where all this comes from, Dom. You know, why are we made to live in fear all the time? And what I'm starting to see is it comes down to the money system. The money system that we operate under, which is a system of debt, inflation, interest, basically putting you in a perpetual state of slavery from the moment you get your first wage slip until you die, or maybe if you're lucky enough to pay the mortgage off before you die. And this money system goes back thousands of years. You know, it's almost, you could think of it as the oldest lie. And all this periphery stuff of fear, control, you know, media, etc. It's all to protect the people that are behind this money system.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's just money shouldn't be used the way it is. It shouldn't give you power. It was never intentioned. It used to be like you had cockle shells in the old days. That was your trading thing, you know, or this guy would have dried hazelnut. As long as it was recognized, it was just a way of you exchanging your services and your needs for somebody else's to survive on this beautiful planet, you know, under what some people might call, you know, God's law, Mother Nature's law, spirit, whatever. That's all it was. And then a group of, I'm going to say men, obviously I wasn't there thousands of years ago, so I don't know, but they got together and thought, well, hang on, look, you know, let's take those shells and these little bits of silver that people are using to try, and let's put them in our vault, and we'll issue bits of paper and put numbers on them. You know, we'll have this ledger. And of course, wasn't long before they started changing the ledger to lend out more of these bits of paper than the actual stuff they had in the vault. Then they started playing people off against each other. Then it was like, well, look, I'll give you 10 more bits of paper than you've given me cockle shells for, but you got to pay me back 12 bits of, right? And this is referred to as usury, right? Which is, you know, charging interest on money. And this is why people who read the scriptures will know the story of Jesus when he threw the moneylenders out of the temple. In our culture, that's put across as he was angry they were trading in God's house. Nah, not at all. It's because Jesus realized usury is a sin under God, right? Or, under human law, let's call it, is probably a better. And that if we allowed it to continue, it will lead to the enslavement of the whole of mankind. And this is why we're in this state that we're in now, where it's almost coming to a sort of end game. And all of this deflection and distraction and infighting and these lives matter and maybe these do and they don't, and you know, all of it's just all a distraction from the fact fundamentally the system of you know, the whole system that our society is based on is one of evil, controlled by evil men, and they even have their own, you know, societies and you know, and people they worship, and the names of this would be totally foreign to you, you know, to your common person, let's say, would be like, what?
When I talk to people that kind of don't, you know, they're not into any of this, I'll just say to them, well, if debt controls people, why do you think they never teach financial studies in school? Why do you think they never show people how to handle money and get a mortgage and not actually get in debt? Why do you think they do that? And they're like, well, I don't know. Like, but you'd think they should, wouldn't you? And most people would say, yeah, they should teach financials in schools. But they don't, because they don't want you to know that stuff. They want you to get out of school and get a car on HP and get a mortgage. And once you're in debt, you can't really do much about it. And it's just a simple thing that most people would say, let's teach financials in school. And then you say, well, why don't they do that? And it's easy to see why.
Yeah. We're also caught up, Dom, aren't we? You know, we caught up in this career. Let's be honest, a lot of jobs that it's not just that they're mundane, it's just they don't really, for the global good, achieve much. You know, sat behind operating a fax machine and this and that, just to churn out this and just repeat this cycle. When, as funnily enough, the current climate is showing actually don't need to do that. You can just sit at home and do nothing, and the world keeps turning. Right? I'm not saying there's not, you know, massive downsides to what's happening in a minute, but I'm just saying that they keep you in that constant state of busyness, not really enlightening yourselves, because you don't learn, you haven't got time to learn. You come home, you're tired, get your tea on, put some soap opera on for an hour or two, or watch a bit of YouTube and go again the next day, isn't it? There's no time to stop and assess the situation and go.
I heard this as a college lecturer who said that he always said to his students coming up to the end of their time with him, he'd say, if money was no object, what would you do? And most of them say, oh, I'd be a writer, or I'd be an artist, I'd be a painter, or be a playwright. But that don't earn money, so I'm not going to do that. So what they end up doing is they go to a job that they hate, so that they can afford to pay for the car that drives them to the job that they hate, that parks in the car park all day while they're at work, to come home to a house that they pay a mortgage on so they can sleep in, to get up the next day and be refreshed, to go to a job that they hate. And that's crazy. You know, and if you do what you love, eventually get that good at it, someone will pay you well for it. You know, and I've seen that firsthand. A good friend of mine, we started an MMA gym back in 2005 when it was kind of new to the UK. And I was kind of looking at different ways to make this gym work. And he was like, I just want to earn money in the fight game. And I'm like, that's a tough game, man. He's like, yeah. And I saw him struggle, and I saw his parents help him out, and, you know, the support network around him. But eventually he made it to the UFC, and that was his dream. And he made it there, and he had 2 fights in the UFC. And I'm like, do you know what? If you do what you love and get that good at it, that someone will pay you really well for it. Then you don't have to do these things. And exactly as you said, Chris, this current climate, no one was saying, oh, where's all bankers? Like, everyone was saying, oh, look at this art work that we're doing. Look at this PE teacher. You know, it was, the world didn't need these people. And that's the only, like you said, probably one of the only good things that came out of it. The rest is just nonsense. But, you know, we at least expose ourselves that health is wealth.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Dom, I just finish off that bit about the money supply, because there was a bit I left out. And I think, not that I wish to talk over your story, but I think there's so much here to be learned in this current climate. And I have one major concern in my life, and that's the future of the children.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that I do the right thing. But going back to these the money lenders, Babylonian money mafia, as you could, because this goes right back to the days of Babylon, is what they did is they realized if they house themselves in, say, palaces and castles and churches and this kind of thing, it gave them a legitimacy, because the public attached so much importance to these.
Yeah.
You know, if you're operating out of a church, how can you be a bad person? You must be something to do with God, right? You're the messenger of God, and you do this money. So people just would, you know, it was a protection for them, right? And then by sort of proxy of this, they started to corrupt the officials in these establishments. So whereas you once had a king, and his job was to look after his public, you know, to look after his community, and that was the honor. That was where the honor lay, was in doing the right thing under, again, I'm just going to use the term God, but under natural law, was doing the right thing. But these very clever money magicians started to sell them on wealth, that their value didn't lay in helping the people, it lay in how much capital they could accumulate. So this then became a kind of dependent relationship that the religious leaders, the kings, the politicians of the time, all became obsessed almost, or maybe indoctrinated with that their intrinsic value lay in how much they were worth rather than the service that they could give. And then, of course, these money magicians, they fished them in, they've got them. They're just controlling them now like puppets, right? And it's so, the reason I say this is it's so interesting to see how this has come down through thousands of years to what we have now, because people are going, the government are making some really weird decisions. They said this yesterday, now they're saying this today, and then we've got, this doctor who's saying that suddenly we all need to have this, certain thing that we've never had. Well, when you understand who all these people are controlled by, then you start to see why we don't live under natural law anymore. We live in a big crime, and it's time. It's got to change, and unfortunately, many people are waking up to this, to this knowledge and this sin that's been conducted on all of us, and as I say, will be, put onto our children if we don't all start to, take an interest in life. You only get one. You only get one of them. It's worth mastering it.
That's right.
Yes. I believe you know my friend Alex Reed.
Yeah. Alex came to our 5th show, Cage Steel 5. Yeah, interesting guy, Alex. I think we talked about mainstream media and lies. I think Alex has probably been personally susceptible to that. He's been horrendous treatment in the mainstream media.
He's been through the bloody celebrity washing machine, isn't he? Bloody hell! Yeah. And the tumble dryer, and then he's been ironed on top.
And he's actually all right, because loads of people say, "Oh, what's he like?" And I'm like, he's actually a good guy. He's actually sound, and it's kind of like he said to me, I had 2 women that were like massive on social media. He said, and I'm a fighter. I'd go into a gym for 3-4 hours. I come out, once they've told that lie to their million people on Twitter, I'm done. Like he is a funny guy as well, isn't he? So yeah, I think the last time I saw him, he was laid on a settee backstage. Just had a fight in the Proxy, is it called in London? Troxy, sorry, the Troxy. And he'd split his lip here, and he was laid on the settee, just having stitches in his lip. So yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah, he's a lovely man. Hello, Alex. I find him really therapeutic. The way he's so gentle, and the way he speaks softly, and nothing like I mean, I obviously don't buy Hello magazine or whatever it is, but I do remember if you went into a shop, there'd always be this big guy looked like he was in the Italian mafia or something, right? And when you get to know him, it's a nice surprise, shall we say?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's Dom. It's a brave old thing to go into a cage, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, say that, but like when I talk to people about this, it's like fighting's easy. It's the training that's hard if you get it right. So if you make, what's that saying? If you the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle or something.
Train hard and fight easy, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So once you kind of, if you've been through those scenarios and those situations, then it does get easy. And as I say to people, the first thing that I try to do with people at training is getting them into like an interclub. So once they get into an interclub, yes, they'll have the nerves on the day, but they realise that it's in a massively controlled environment. They're wearing shin pads and things like that. And it's 1.5 minute rounds, 3 of. And it's not designed to get a winner. It's designed to get both people to have a draw, no judges, and just give them that experience. And once they've done that, they're like, oh, that was actually all right. And then they'll do a second one and think, oh, this is ace. And then they kind of want to do a fight. And the first fight, it'll be like crazy. You don't hear your cornermen and stuff like that. But then the second fight, you kind of chilled. You kind of get through it a bit more. But I think it's more intimidating looking from the outside in. And people look at the sport. We've had to do a massive job on kind of diluting the kind of how the perceptions of the sport. So everybody, when it first came out, people in the UK loved to talk about cage fighting, and they put like blood on the posters, and it was like they wanted to scare the little old lady. It was the shock factor. A lot of those people now have gone to bare knuckle boxing, so that's more of the shock factor, because there's people like myself, there's a lot of other promoters that talk about mixed martial arts, not cage fighting. Don't get me wrong, sometimes we have to say, I promote cage fighting. Or I kind of say, I promote mixed martial arts. And if they kind of blank look, it's like, cage fighting. Oh, yeah. So they understand that it's now about martial arts, and these guys are athletes, and it's come more into the forefront now. The UFC have put it in people's living room. Conor McGregor made a massive difference to the sport. So it's kind of looked on it differently. The perceptions are a little bit different. We've had to kind of water it down, just because, we've got a project now where we're going into schools to teach a martial art. We're not doing MMA, we're doing like a hybrid kickboxing, but we're putting instructors into schools for free, because martial arts has literally given me an unbelievable life. The respect and discipline that it puts in your life is incredible. So it's kind of like giving back now. So we want to put those people in schools. When you get kind of areas of deprivation, you come across kids that probably need it more than ever, but their parents don't have the money to be able to send them to a club. So for us to be able to put them in the schools, they'll get a kind of sampling of martial arts, and hopefully, the respect, discipline, tackling obesity, diabetes, bullying. The figures, when you look at them, are terrible. 1 in 5 bullied, and it's something like 46 children are excluded from school every single day in the UK, in England, I think, not just the UK. And they're crazy figures, and it's like, well, maybe martial arts can help with that. And if we send people in and we give back, and they always say, I think Winston Churchill said it actually. You make a living by what you get, and you make a life by what you give. And it's for us to give back and make people understand. So we had to kind of dilute the cage fighting, the perception, because to be able to go into schools, you don't want to go into schools talking about cage fighting, because people will be like, "What?" Parents will be up in arms and everything. When they realise it's a martial art that we're kind of taking in, then it's a lot better.
It's an interesting point you make, because MMA is very appealing to, young men and women, but predominantly young men. We've got a lot of obviously young men who lack a significant male role model in their lives, or they're coming from a disenfranchised or abusive background, and you've got these guys that they must look up to, like they wish that was their dad. How do you feel then about this trash talking, which we know it's to promote the match, to promote the fight. We know, you know, we're old enough to know it's all about putting the viewing figures on satellite TV up or whatever. But I'm not going to say any names, but some of the stuff that comes out their mouths, if you don't understand that it's all a bit of gameplay,
Yeah.
it really could sound to a young person like that. It's fine to talk to people like that, to insult, you know, their dead parents or whatever.
Yeah. So for me, like, we've seen this for years and years in boxing, and the part that I love about martial arts is that there's so much respect, and that it was never ever part of the game. Like, I'm a promoter, so someone like Eddie Hearn sees two of his guys like Fury and AJ kicking off with each other. Eddie Hearn is rubbing his hands because he's thinking about the money. I'm never like that, and I always say, the fight, you know, you don't have to talk this fight up. It's a great fight. You don't have to kind of call each other names and things like that. For me, I'd rather not, and I'd rather earn less money and have the respect still in the world than have all that show and just nonsense, really. Because like you said there, I think I know who you're referring to, and for me, it kind of crossed the line. Once you being disrespectful to someone's family and religion and anything like that, I just think that there's no need for that. And, you know, the famous thing was, there was a fight, and the other guy that he'd been slating had the upper hand, and he said to him, "It's only business." And he's like, "Yeah, you're just doing that to make money." And you know, I've always said, it's not a business if it doesn't make money, but it's a poor business if it only makes money. And if that's all the end game is, to talk, get these people to talk up and really stir the pot to make them have this kind of aggression, then that's poor to me. I'd rather have the respect still in the sport. And like I said, that's what I love about MMA and Thai. You know, these guys literally tear each other up, and then they're the best of mates. You know, you shake hands with each other, and it's incredible. And I prefer it to stay like that.
Yeah, we're in a similar boat, except I don't get punched. Well, I will start getting punched by some people, I'm sure. But it's the same with the podcast. You know, there is a very easy option to take by just going down the road of certain subjects, and your viewing figures just go through the roof. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it when I've just touched on those areas. And obviously viewing figures equals pound notes, you know, in your Babylonian money magician's bank account. Right. But it's that thing, isn't it, where you have to live with yourself and look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day, because if you can't, you're not free. You know,
No.
You're not free. You're a slave to either your ego or you're using people. It gets quite difficult for me, Don, because of a lot of the military people I chat to. And obviously now that I'm old enough and ugly enough to know who controls the military, which is the same people, you know, the same system that has gone back thousands of years. I want to be really honest with young people and let them know war is hell. Hell's just a word. It doesn't describe the horror that's attached to it, and what a lot of people, not just the soldiers, but also the family and the communities and the economies and all this stuff, and just the PTSD stories that are coming out now are horrific. But so yeah, I can empathize with what you've said. You've got to do the right thing at the end of the day, haven't you? As much as you can in this weird system that does put pressure on you to, you know, be somebody you're not.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Be true to you, and that's the best thing you can be. And I think a lot of these people, they're not being true. They're kind of acting and trying to make money out of it. And I just think, well, don't get me wrong, it's a tough sport, and I understand that getting punched in the face, if you don't talk rubbish, you get punched in the face and you earn this amount. And you talk rubbish, you get punched in the face, you earn this amount. That's kind of appealing. I'll just talk rubbish because I'm getting punched anyway. So, but for me, I just prefer the respect.
Yes, exactly. Something I'd really like to ask you about is it's this thing about whether it's safer to have the lightweight glove or even a bare knuckle than it is to have the boxing glove with all the cushioning, which you feel free to correct me here, but which means that people are having to, because they've got this false sense of protection on their hand, or well, it's not false sense, it's protection. They can hit so much harder than you could if you had a bare fist. And this relates to the punch drunkenness and the brain injuries that fighters can experience. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the only thing I can sort of go off is kind of the medical stuff. So if you look at boxers and, you know, the kind of harrowing deaths in boxing, and then, like you say, long-term combat injuries like punch drunk, then they come from continual hits of a padded glove, which don't actually knock you out. So they hit hard, but they don't knock people out. So there's this kind of less, it's more of a kind of longer term. So they'll go 12 rounds, and for 12 rounds they've continually be punched in the head, which is obviously damaging to the brain cells. Whereas the smaller gloves, it's more of an impact thing. So boom, they kind of not with it, and the fight ends. And that, to me, it's a kind of strange thing for people, because they think that having less a glove on would be more dangerous, when actually having the glove on appears medically to be the worst one. Like I say, that the less you've got on your knuckles, you can kind of break your knuckles. I think that's why bare knuckle boxing is such a mad thing, because the people are breaking their knuckles, they're breaking their cheekbones, their eye sockets. So you've got something there that has a kind of a short-term and a long-term effect, because broken eye sockets and things, you don't really get to fight again, and they're plated up and things like that. So when you look at MMA, we kind of sit in the middle. We kind of sit with a bit of protection on there, but not enough to have the kind of long-term acute injuries, you know. So that's kind of where I'd sit. And if people talk to me about the pros and cons of bare knuckle boxing, MMA, and then boxing, then, you know, we kind of sit in a nice little zone, really. Is that, touch wood, there's people that don't get as bad injuries.
Yeah. Has there been any tragic accidents?
Do you know what? I only know of deaths from, like, when people have done weight cuts, because it's one of the things that went about for years. People cutting weight is such a crazy thing in MMA. People cutting from ridiculous weights. They were like 98 kilogram cutting to 77 kilogram, and it's mad. I mean, in my last fight, so you're like 47 years old, 46, 47, and you're cutting 12 kilograms off yourself, you know, from 92 to 80 kilogram. You're just thinking, what am I doing? Now, luckily, I did it I had a really good nutritionist and a good S&C coach who we kind of worked on it a lot with what I knew and what he knew. And we did it over like 16 weeks. I didn't have to sauna. I didn't have to jump in the bath with salts in. You know, I kind of did it in a diet way, and it worked. But some of these guys are, you know, they're in the sauna. The dehydration that they push their bodies to is mad. I think that's the one thing that does sit. I think, God, you know what? I don't kind of like that. So as an organization, we did something different to even like the UFC. So the UFC, just taking a couple of instances, the UFC will have 70 kilo, 77 kilo, 84 and 93. So if you're kind of around 90, 98 and you think, oh, I'll cut to 93, your next one down is 84. People struggle to go from 93 to 84. So they're literally destroying their body to get to 84. So what we did as an organization is we went, right, we're going to have a 70, a 74, a 77, an 80, an 84, an 88, and a 93. So the kind of cuts that people have to go through they're a lot less. Weigh-ins are a lot easier. People are not as kind of dehydrated and struggling. Do you know what? It's made the fights better because we've got people who. So we've got one young lad who's an amateur guy, 93 kilogram. He came in. His opponent had said that he got a bit of weight on. And I think when he celebrated, he kind of did this to the fans. But so he was a beast at 93, light heavyweight. Instead of having to cut to 84, he fought at 88, and what a great match because he only had to cut 5 kilo out, and he was still a beast, you know. And it made for the fights better. So when you talk about gloves and things, I think we're in a great situation. I think we just got to learn a little bit in terms of weight cuts because that's a kind of dangerous area for me. Dehydrating your body so much is mad, and then fighting the next day, that could be where the sport kind of has a bit of a fall down.
Yeah, definitely. And did I hear you're quite big on social media? Is that?
Yeah, we are. As an organisation, we're massive. We do like 1.1 million reach per month on Facebook. We're kind of building. Well, our Instagram's quite good, and you know our other social medias like really good. We're kind of building our YouTube channel a little bit. We didn't really push that enough. We concentrated on our Facebook, which is massive. And I kind of do all right as well on social media. So yeah.
And can you tell us a bit more about the TV? Cage Steel TV.
Yeah. So this is something that 2 years ago we did a pilot episode. It's something that I've always wanted to do. So it was about giving the kind of public, not just because all we did for years is interview fighters and then put on shows. And there's so much more to what happens, and there's so much knowledge that we've got. Like myself, it's like diet, you know, that cutting weight thing. So many people want to lose weight. Well, if they can use the same concepts as I used to cut the 12 kilo without having to fight, then that's cool. So I wanted to share knowledge. You know, Bruce Lee always said, pass on your learnings and your knowledge and you become immortal. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to share our knowledge. 2 years ago, we made this pilot episode, and we've just been way, way too busy to actually follow it up. So, like I said, I describe myself as an annoyingly positive person. So COVID hit. I've got 2 industries. I own like a nightclub in Doncaster as well. So for 5 months, both my businesses have literally been shut down. We have not been allowed to open. And I look at all like restaurants being supported. I think, wow, this is mad. So what we did is I kind of looked at it as okay, this is an opportunity for us to do the Cage Steel TV things that we've always kind of wanted to do. So we've kind of done that as a Patreon service so that we can then like build the funds to put into the Cage Steel martial arts. So we worked on Cage Steel TV and Cage Steel martial arts, which is where we're going to put coaches into schools for free. So we looked at it, I looked at it in a different way, which is like, this is an opportunity. Our businesses are on stop. Someone's pressed pause button. Let's do these kind of projects that we've always wanted to do and get them out there, you know, and see where we are. And those things will run parallel to our shows. You know, shows are something that I absolutely love doing. So I didn't want something that kind of stops doing what we're doing. But at the minute, we obviously can't do a show. So we may as well do Cage Steel TV.
Yeah, well, good luck with it all.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you need like a presenter, You know where to. Dom, can we talk about Ben? Ben was your friend that was badly injured.
Yeah, so Ben Parkinson, Britain's most wounded surviving soldier, was in a Land Rover when it hit a mine, and it blew up, lost both his legs, fractures of his arms, his fingers, his multiple fractures of his brain, his back, and he was literally sent home to die. You know, I know Ben's family, and you know, I know the whole story, that kind of trauma that they went through. They just had an army officer knock on the door and say, you know, Ben's been injured. I don't know how bad it is yet, but it doesn't seem good. And he said he'd come back when he got more information. And he kind of came back and said, look, we're flying him home, but we don't think he'll make the journey. And they sent him home to die. And the guy is the most inspiring man you could ever wish to meet. You know, he's just, the way that he kind of gets on with life is just incredible. If ever you, like, sometimes you're feeling, you know, down, or you're not quite yourself, and Ben will message me or something like that, I just think, oh, what am I thinking here? Like, I'm worried about stupid stuff. This guy gets on with his life, and he's done some amazing things. He was awarded an MBE. He carried the torch at the 2012 Olympics. And if anyone wants to look at that, that is a crazy YouTube video to watch. Ben Parkinson, 2012 torch carrying. He was told that he had to do it in his chair, and he wanted to do it on his prosthetic limbs. He was told that they weren't allowed any army guys around him. They weren't allowed any colours. They weren't allowed any berets. And Ben gave him the torch back. He said, well, I'm not doing it then. And his kind of speech then was not as good as it is now. You know, he's had to really work hard on that. But he was like, I'm not doing it. So they went, oh, okay, we'll let you do it. Like, I think they kind of thought that he'd do it in his wheelchair. And at the time, when the time came, Ben stood up, and all the army lads came round, all his parachute regiment, all with berets on. Banner went up. They couldn't do nothing about it because it was on like mainstream TV. There was thousands of people, and everyone kind of crowded round. And he walked in. They only kind of allow like 4 minutes between each one, you know, to be able to get it round. And I think Ben took like half an hour to be able to do the walk. It is an amazing video to watch. It's so like proper gets you here. But Ben is just an inspiration. Like, no one trains as hard as Ben. No one. I've gone to some gym. I've gone to a lot of gyms around this country, you know, with MMA and stuff. Ben is an incredible trainer, because at the end of the day, he can take his legs, but he can't take the power out of here and out of here. And that's the thing. He is a tough guy. I love being with Ben. We just have so much fun. He's an absolute inspiration.
How was it for you then, Don, when you heard the news? Because I know it might sound a bit of a silly question, but well, I guess these things affect everybody differently, and I also guess that many of us must sort of envisage what the hell must that be like?
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know Ben before his accident, and this is one of the like crazy things, is that Ben to me is like the most inspirational person I've ever kind of met in my life, and Ben doesn't even see it. Ben said to me once about his bomb blast. He said, "Oh, do you know what? If I hadn't had that bomb blast, I wouldn't have met people like you." And I'm like, Ben, I got to meet you. Like, that's not even a thing. Like, he's so humble, you know what I mean? I can't imagine what it was like. I think he had a girlfriend at the time, and she was told that he'd been killed. I mean, his family went through hell. You know, they said to the family, he might be able to sit up in his bed one day, but that's the best you can hope for. Do you know what? He's just done John O'Groats to Land's End bicycle riding. I think he has the kind of handle things, and he was on a BBC documentary called Wilderness Warrior, and he gets in a canoe and does. There's a river in Canada, I think it is, about 250 mile. It's so mad. The presenter at one bit sits down with Ben and says, "Right, Ben, you've got a time machine. Can go back in time to 5 minutes before that bomb blast. What do you do different?" Ben says, "Nothing." Said, "Because that could have been one of my friends that got blown up, and they could have had worse than me. They could have been killed." Now I went to the premiere of this thing at the Royal Box at the Doncaster Racecourse. I'm not kidding. There were some tough guys in that room, ex-SAS guys, you know, like Rusty Furman and people like that. And I think all of us were like this. Fine. It was a crazy thing to say that, you know, that's the kind of brotherhood that they've got. Is one of his friends could have been injured, or they could have even worse been killed, and Ben wouldn't swap that. It's mad to hear that. Mad.
Would Ben come on the podcast, do you think?
I think he probably would if we kind of did it as a joint, maybe him and his dad or myself. Just because sometimes his speech is still a little bit difficult to understand, so you kind of have to ask again, or like those of us that kind of around him a lot, we kind of know what he's saying, but his speech still is a little bit off in places. So, like I said, the improvements they've made are ridiculous, but he's not, you know, he's not 100% there, and it's.
Yeah.
But he is a great guy to at least have on, even if it's for 10 minutes, you know, just to speak to the guy. He's so funny. He's a good guy.
Yeah, we'll you know, we'll get around anything. That's half the point of or half the battle, isn't it? Is just carry on smashing it.
Yeah, that's it. That's what his motto has been anyway. So just keep going. So yeah, I'm sure we can sort something.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Dom, we were going to talk about Q, weren't we? Because it's very fascinating, really, really fascinating, and it's something that's very easy to write off if you look at the I don't want to say the whole word, because the computer systems are starting to pick up on that now, but I think everyone knows what I mean if I say the Q movement. Yeah. But it's the sort of thing that was really easy to write off to sort of a fad, or maybe a bit of a cult. Which you know, things can be fads and cults, and also
true.
You know, and also true. Yeah, I mean that's just the way life is. But it's also it's fascinating from the perspective. It has got so many people talking about freedom, and the impingement, if that's the right word, on our values and our lives, and the implications for the future. It's got people looking at the structural perspective, which is what I was mentioned earlier. For someone like myself, I'd say there's an awful lot more structure that's needing to be addressed, rather than, you know, this politician here because he's been, you know, abusing children or whatever it might be, and the horrendous stuff with respect to the traffic that we all know about that. But we also, I'd urge everyone to remember all of these ills and so come back to this central evil that I mentioned earlier. It's all offshoots and representative of it. And unless we're willing to consider humanity as a whole, rather than address little pockets of it and think that, hey, I've done my bit.
Yeah.
It's all just going to end up in the same shit show all over again for children and future generations. But notwithstanding that, at least it is getting people to start thinking outside the box. Indeed, again, going back to this central evil system, they are very clever. They've done this for thousands of years. They've been controlling you and me. Well, not so much now, but they are incredibly, they understand physics, chemistry, human psychology. They understand the trends in the environments, sun patterns. They know economics. They the very, thousands of years, folks, thousands of years of knowledge they have to. So when we look at something like Q, we you still have to keep that little part of you that can step outside and view this situation from a detached perspective. Otherwise, you risk becoming a part of the bigger problem. Sorry, I just wanted to put that out there, because I haven't heard anyone else really saying this. People either tend to go, yeah, it's brilliant, or yeah, it's a psyop, right? And there's none of this. But what are your thoughts then, Dom?
So I'm quite new to Q. I always never considered myself as a conspiracy theorist. I kind of went, no. There's 9/11. It can't have been an inside job. There would be too many people have to know about it, and I really kind of went along that path. And then I started to do some research and started to look at it. So I'm one of these that I don't believe something unless there's proof, unless there's evidence. So as I started to look at this stuff, more and more things came about, the whole Epstein stuff, and I watched Fall Cabal, which I would recommend if anyone's kind of new to this stuff, watch Fall Cabal, and it kind of joined a lot of dots for me. And now I'm just like, wow. And I'm still a bit kind of reserved and guarded, because you go out there, if you go out and start saying these things, there are still some people who call you an absolute nutcase and a tinfoil hat wearer and conspiracy theorist and an idiot and all this lot. It's like, well, I'm kind of still guarded. I listen to people. I listen to a lot of stuff. I'll do my research, and I'll make sure that I research so I know who's telling me this stuff. So if I'm going to Google it, and I'm going to get the answers that they want to give me, and it's kind of knowing first of all who's telling you and why they want to tell you that. And like I said, I'm kind of quite new, but I consider myself to have taken the red pill, isn't it?
Mate, you're talking to someone with no memory, so I always get confused. But it's a pill, put it that way.
Like it's red or blue pill, and I've taken it now. I'm awake, and it's like the more and more that I discuss with people, there are still some people that are so asleep, and you can see that from those people. So the way that if we take the mask situation, look how they've sold it to us. What better way to get the people to police the people? Like, when did grassing become something that's okay? Like, live and let live. If someone doesn't want to wear it, so what? It's cool, it's fine. But it's like, now I've actually been in shops and being challenged, not by any authority, but by a member of the public, saying you should wear a mask. And I'm like, no, I shouldn't. And it's just a clever way that, they tell you that we're doing it. You have to wear a mask because you've got to think about your grandma or my grandma. And, These people don't give a shit.
Emotional leverage as opposed to the facts.
They don't care about mine and your grandma. Mine and your grandma have paid into the system. Once they start taking a pension, they're a cost. They're a liability. They're no longer an asset. They don't care about them. You know, you talked about the money and how it's set up and things like that. Our parents, our grandparents paid into this system. Once they start taking out, they're a liability. They don't care about them. Look what they did with the care homes. You know, and I could get on this subject for ages, and I'll go along the real simple facts of it. You know, I kind of still guarded about some of this stuff. I mean, you listen to like the Pizzagate stuff, and I still have trouble. Kind of comprehending that people would sacrifice, actually murder children. I kind of, that one hasn't kind of been proven to me, so I'm still a little bit guarded on it. You look at Pizzagate and you think, well, it's just so much there, and the number of children trafficked. And before all this, you know, you think that there's Ben Needham and Madeleine McCann. You think they're the only two that's ever gone missing in the world, and it's ridiculous. And to think that we've been deceived all these years. You know, I read a thing once that said a person would rather keep being deceived than actually learn they've been deceived. And that, I think, is a lot of it. Those people that are still fighting this don't want to be told that they've been deceived, that you've been tricked and you've been lied to for all these years. It is difficult to kind of accept. But the quicker we accept it, and the quicker we kind of rebel, while we keep being complicit, then they'll keep pushing this. If we all said, no, we're not doing it no more, what you've got to remember is, what's the saying? The power of the people is more powerful than the people in power. And we have to remember, we are the power, and we might have to grab this power back. So yeah, Q is so interesting.
It is interesting. Again, I advise education, but I just also advise caution in the same.
Yeah.
You know, it goes back to that thing. I have to look myself in the mirror. I could easily sit here and just tell you President Trump's the greatest thing that's ever happened to this, right? I wouldn't be being true to myself. I'd be lying just to make some money on you know, get a few views on YouTube, and that's not who I am. But I would. Yeah, I sort of urge caution on myself, because I've allegedly, well, I'll tell you what I heard was that Trump was bailed out by the Rothschilds. And I don't necessarily mean like, you know, he's out in the world to do bad stuff on their behalf, but I just mean that, you know, these relationships are cultivated for a reason. And it's like I said, do we ever hear anyone refer to this evil money supply this system that we need to, I haven't heard, you know, occasionally you hear terms like the Khazarian mafia and this sort of thing, but not really from within the Q movement. And again, it just comes back to what I said a moment ago, is if you don't address the root cause of a problem, it's just going to manifest itself again.
Yeah.
And as such, going after these traffickers or going after this corruption, and I welcome that it goes on, but it's just, you know, it's like cutting out the rot there, and then it's just going to develop. You know, it's all interconnected. It's all interconnected. I'm sorry if I'm not making a lot of sense to our friends at home, but that's because obviously this is not simple.
No, it's not.
Like I say, if it's written in the Bible, that was you know, and if the story of Jesus is to be believed, that's 2,000 years ago in itself, and it didn't start in the Bible. This monetary system, this working out how to control other people's brains, hence why they call it money magic. You know, how to manifest wealth out of nothing goes back thousands of years. It's why they're called the Babylonian money magicians, right? And I've just heard no talk. I mean, I hope if anyone's listening, please, you know, please correct me or inform me or because I'm here for all of you. I love everybody. I want the best for everybody. And I certainly want, you know, for the future generations. I'm not interested in me or my ego. I could quite happily die in this chair right in this second. I've got no problem with that at all. My life's been very challenging at times, but that doesn't take away from the fact it's been wonderful, you know, and I'm, you know, if it wasn't for the fact I've got a little one, I'm done here, you know. That's kind of my feeling. But yes, it's like I say, it's the clues in the word magician. Look at, you know, what this hand, everyone's watching what this hand is doing.
Yeah.
And now no doubt they're learning a lot by watching this hand, but you know, what is this one? It's just my feelings. And as I say, I don't wish to offend anyone, but it's interesting, you know.
Yeah,
it's interesting. And like I say, it's not to say that I don't hear some things about this Q organization which are like, wow. I mean, there's websites you can go to where you can get up people's criminal records.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is some sort of, again, somebody please enlighten me if you understand, but you type in all your celebrities, all the ones that are on these lists, and they come up. I haven't followed that through because I didn't know if this particular website was some sort of scam, whereas if you paid your $5 a month to get the full record, that you know, all hell's going to break out loose, or it's some big computer virus or something. But interesting. At the very least, it is churning up a lot of dirt. Isn't even the right word, is it? A lot of depravity that we didn't, you know, we certainly as a children, my gosh, we didn't know that's going on. But even us, Dom, as adults, we know that our precious BBC now is staffed by sex offenders.
Yeah.
Not everybody, obviously, but a significant proportion, as well as our parliament, and it goes on and it goes on. So, do you see anywhere where this is going? The world in general, I mean.
Who knows? Like you say, watch this space. It feels like something is happening. Something quite biblical is happening. This could be the craziest time that anyone's ever lived. You know, we really don't know everything that's going on. It is very, very intriguing.
Yes, it is. I wish I could say more, but you know, I'm acutely aware I'm not best qualified to talk on the subject of Q. And it is very close to people's hearts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's hope it offers up a glimmer of hope for us all. Yeah, we will see.
Yes.
I will say follow the natural law, though, folks. You know, that's I don't know why I just developed this sense that I feel like I know Dom the way to be. You know.
Yeah.
You know, you know when you're doing something wrong, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's not good for you, but that's the beauty of podcasting, mate, isn't it? Is you never know where it's going to take you.
No, that's right.
Yes, it's like what are those things where you all jump in a car and you have to go and find clues? What are they called? Adventure races or quiz? Can't remember. But yes. Anyway, you never know where you're going to end up. Dom, thank you ever so much.
No problem.
It's been you're a fascinating guy, fascinating conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, Chris.
Yeah, I really feel like as a person, I've got a massive amount out of it.
Good.
Can I come to one of your shows when you get it back on?
Yeah. Absolutely, you're more than welcome. Come along with Naz and Sal.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll get the chance to meet you in person, which will also be great.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yes. Stay on the line, Dom. To everybody at home, massive thank you for watching another episode of the Bought the T-Shirt podcast. If you could do the like and subscribe thing, that would be wonderful. Hope you've got something out of this. Much love to you all. Dom's gone sideways. See you next time. Hello, friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris THRALL. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.